I wish I could have put a guitar in his hand because the guy's a musical genius. I was terrified when I got that one on my desk first. I've been eating cheese and drinking wine for like 4 months, man. Make sure you're bringing people along with you as opposed to just telling them. Shoot, I'm just dying like, Jake, I can see your shoes. That's something I'm currently writing. That's the first time I've talked about it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Heart in Motion podcast. I'm so excited today to be speaking with director Maxwell McGuire. Max, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure to wake up to in my inbox, so I look forward to talking.
We're so excited that this month, two of your movies that you directed in the Unwrapping Christmas series are a part of Hallmark's Christmas in July promo. And so we just actually got to watch one of those this past weekend, the Tina's Miracle one. And then we've got one coming up later in the month. So I'm excited to hear from your perspective about directing both of those movies.
I'm excited to talk about it. They took up most of my last summer. And so it was a joy to work with old friends, new friends, and turn the summer into winter as we do up here in Ottawa.
Okay, that's great. So before we get into those, you've got a great story about how you actually got into directing. Do you mind sharing just a little bit of that with everybody listening?
Yeah, I mean, there's a long story and a short story. What do you want?
Whichever version you want to give.
So, I mean, first, I don't know if some of your viewers may or may not know I have cystic fibrosis, and that changed how my father said I was going to be raised from day one. Because when he got the diagnosis, he popped me in his car, took a 2 hour ride when I was 2 years old, handed me back to my mother, who was a European Greek, and he said, "Well, we'll raise him your way." He goes, "Had it been my way, you were going to go to professional school and be a doctor, dentist, engineer, and do what you're supposed to do in North America." And so we were raised with the idea of like doing what we love and following a passion, finding a purpose. Um, Little did he know it would end up in me pursuing the arts. And so he actually had wanted to be a writer, actor when he was, a professional, and his father had told him, "No, you gotta, earn the money, take care of the family." And him and his brother wrote screenplays that were unproduced for 20 years. And so I grew up with them, screenplays, books, movie iconography around the house, but didn't really mean anything to me till I was about 18 and we made a movie together. It was awful, but I got a Canada Council for the Arts grant to complete it. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, maybe I have some potential. I made a half dozen other short films, documentaries, scripts that never got made, and finally wrote something called Foreverland that a producer told me, "Don't go make this with your friends. We might be able to make some money off this." 5 years after that, the movie finally got made right before my 30th birthday. And I had set an internal deadline that if I didn't get a movie made by 30, maybe I just was going to be on the other side of the camera or, sorry, in business or something else. I love the industry, but I didn't know if there was a path. And I got it made, and then I said, oh, I guess I'm going to do this. And Foreverland came out. I toured the world. It was a movie about a guy with cystic fibrosis who goes looking for a cure. We raised $250,000 for research. And I got exposed to the professional side of filmmaking. And then cut to 30 something odd movies later, and I still get to work in a chosen profession I thought I wanted to do at 18. So it's pretty cool.
I love that story. It's so cool. You've shared that Foreverland is your favorite movie that you've directed. Does that still hold true?
It holds for the main reason that it was so personal, that I can look at every element of that and say it's a piece of me, my family, my sister, the road, the journey, the creation of something I made in my parents' basement at 25 that got made at 30.
Yeah.
I wish I had the 30 odd movies experience behind me before I made that movie because I would have made different choices. I would have been able to enhance the tools I had, the actors at my fingertips. I'm sure looked at me like I was a fool, even though they loved me in the project. And it's just experience. I got 17,000 hours on set now, and I would have maybe done some things differently and known how to vocalize my wants more and to
Mm,
get more out of it. But yeah, no, personally, it's still my favorite.
that's so cool. So your story with cystic fibrosis, it's pretty interesting to watch that journey. And I noticed that, and I don't know how many summers you've been doing this, but the whole lawn summer nights. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that means to you?
Yeah, Lawn Summer Nights is a fundraising initiative started in Vancouver. Um, unfortunately, when a CF patient passed, her friends wanted to memorialize her. And it ended up just with friends in the park lawn bowling, and it turned into a national fundraiser in Canada that's raised millions of dollars for CF. When it came to Ottawa on its second year, I think about 14 years ago, we heard about it. My sisters and I, we joined in, and Ottawa being a political capital of Canada, there was lots of there was a lot of benefit because they brought in government relations, pharmaceuticals, and it was 160 people, young, wanted to do something vibrant on a summer Wednesday night, and we'd raise tens of thousands of dollars for CF. And my team, I'm going to brag here. We've been the number one fundraiser in Ottawa since we started, and we always battle with this one team from Vancouver to be number one in the whole country. And so now I've brought my wife in on it, and my sisters and my wife are doing it again. This year, it's actually Wednesday night. And once again, we are leading the charge for fundraising in Ottawa. So it's fun because I've seen it go from pre-Trikafta, which is the miracle drug that research ultimately funded that changed my life from 69% lung function back to 91, which is statistically normal. I've seen it go from before that to friends I knew in the hospital who were sick and on the edge to revivals. I've seen kids of people that come and talk who are 5, 6, 7 years old, never really got the negative impact of the illness yet, and then now never having to because the drug kind of stopped their progression of their illness in its tracks. And so it's important to me because I'm a testament to it. It worked. The research, funding, the industry kept
Hmm.
us alive.
Yeah. It's so cool to see uh, going on to your profile on Instagram and checking out how you're promoting it and seeing that journey for you and just how that research has changed your life and has changed so many people's lives. I think it's so cool that you've got this opportunity to give back to something that's really impacted your life. So,
I agree. It's a gift to be able to give back as opposed to being on the receiving end all the time.
yeah. Wow. And that information is on your profile if anybody wants to give to that as well. And we're here to talk about movies, but this was really
Yeah.
important. This was really important to me and just checking it out. And the research is so important. So I definitely wanted to take some time to visit about that. So,
I appreciate you even mentioning it and plugging it a bit. And so, if anybody wants to give, of course, the foundation will be happy to accept. And the truth is, even though I've gained so much lung function and life, when I was born, we weren't supposed to live past 13. And then when I was 13, it was 30. And I'm 44 now. We don't know.
yeah,
We don't know. But we also don't know what's to come because in keeping us alive with all these drugs, there's also a downside. Now, the flip side to that is we know what the alternative would have been. And so we're hoping to have a cure, not just to control. And they are working on stuff like that. So it still matters, even though it can feel like we're all good now. But
yeah.
this is just to hold us over until we find the big cure.
Absolutely. And we just keep finding ways to fund that research to continue to grow that as much as possible.
Yeah.
So
And I
let's
also
talk
know it's a
about,
tough year, by the way, for everybody.
yes. Yeah.
Like it's been, economy's been rocking. So we know that. I expect nothing. And, we do what we can, all of us.
Yeah. Absolutely. So much going on. But at the same time, I think for me, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think for me, it's in moments like this when things are kind of the way they are that it's like, what is that piece, that thing that I can do to
Yeah.
contribute positively to whatever is going on right now? So.
And that's why we appreciate people like you.
So let's talk about Unwrapping Christmas. Like I said earlier, you directed two of the four movies that are airing. These movies aired on Hallmark Plus last winter, but now they've made their way to the Christmas in July lineup on Hallmark. Can you tell me how you got involved in this project? Like, how far back did your involvement go?
There's some politics. Johnson Production Company, who's been my biggest client, is ultimately behind it, and there was a creative called Lisa there who, along under Tim, the boss's tutelage, developed this with Hallmark, and they pitched it. And so I heard about it long before I was actually hired. And Ottawa production team Fireside is a company that an outpost of Johnson. So these guys all have companies all around the country maximizing tax credits. And so, in a way, it came to us. But I also happen to know a couple of the writers because I've made multiple Hallmark movies with them as well. Carly Smale, shout out. She is like, I think, one of the finest rom-com writers in the business. Um, and so I heard about it early and often, and I was wondering if I was going to get the tap. And then I talked to the team. They said, yeah, I think you're going to do two of the four if you want to. And I said, of course I want to. And I get teamed up on the first one that's being released as Tina's story, and that's with an old friend, Natalie Hall, and a new friend, Alec Santos. Natalie and I came up doing rom-coms together, Midnight at the Magnolia being one of our most successful on Netflix. And then the next one I heard was going to be Cindy, and Cindy is an old friend from before the Hallmark days. She's friends with my actor friends in Vancouver when we were all just starting at 18, 19, 20. And then Jake Epstein, who was my third collaboration with. And so when I heard these names, this project, everything else, I was happy to get to work in April and not stop until the end of summer.
So, for those that haven't watched Tina's Miracle yet or haven't viewed them on Hallmark Plus, can you give us just kind of like an overview? Because I know this series is a bit different that all of the stories are kind of working simultaneously. So, can you
Yes.
just kind of give us an overview about Unwrapping Christmas?
Okay, now you're asking me to go into the pitch well of a year ago. Had you asked me 6 months ago, I knew all
Listen, when
the
I talked with
cleanest
Natalie
versions.
the other day, I told Natalie I would be her lifeline. So, I've got you.
There you go. Okay, so overall, it's a store called Unwrapped? Wrap it. I don't remember what they call the store anymore.
Oh, now
Uh,
that's what I don't know.
no, it wouldn't
It's
be
a great
unwrapped
gift
because
wrapping store.
it's
Let's
a
go with
gift
that.
wrapping store that these girls started in high school or university as a college project, and then they all best friends that got so wrapped up in business they maybe struggled to take care of their love lives, and so every individual gets their own love story, hence the four stories. But the first one is Tina's, and she's kind of the inside joke is they all think they created the company, but Tina, in my estimation, probably did. And she's the organized A type. And this one took on, we really approached it as the classical love story because it's the old home, her father, the memorabilia, the history. And so within her love stories intertwined, an unraveling of the house that they have to throw the party at. And so, without giving away too much of the actual finer details of the mystery plot, um, we wanted to go classic with their attire, all the settings, all the housing, all the decor. I don't know if you've noticed, but every individual has their own style of decor. Same with their dress colors and everything else. So much so that Natalie even added a crinoline sleeve to her dress because she's like, I think I'd be a bit more proper as opposed to some of the others. So we got down to some of the nitty gritties on making sure it was in line with each individual's movie. And so this one is she has a happenstance encounter with a young woman in a department store while shopping, and then she meets her father, and they get along, and then their stories intertwine, including with the property and the plot, and hopefully all ties together with a magical kiss.
At the end, always, right?
Yeah.
So, you mentioned that you've got the first one with Tina's Miracle and then the one at the end with Cindy. Was it always set up that that would be that you'd be doing the first and the fourth? Because I know the stories kind of overlap, so it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. Was it always
There
planned
was
that way?
some debate on the timelines to answer that very specifically. Because initially they were going to be intertwined.
Got it.
But getting 8 Hallmark stars in the same city at the same time while you're buttressing with the beginning of one movie and the end of another, very difficult. And so, and I saw this with my friend Tyler and the groomsmen, the same thing. It's often ends up being phone calls, a couple key scenes together. And so we always put them together at the top and always put them together at the end because that's two locations you knew you were going to have them on in production. I mean, the reality is I can't just fly people in for single day scenes to go for a walk and talk down the street.
Yeah.
I'd love to, and that would have been more of a series. But ultimately, I think the network and Johnson decided it would be cleaner that we can have self-contained movies that intertwine at the beginning and the end.
Got it.
And so I helped. They did all the creative, Carly and team, and Michael Vickerman and Lisa, and then they figured that all out, and then I helped try to tie it together on the production side.
Oh, got it.
How to maximize those crossover scenes. That's what we called them.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So Natalie shared with me that she really enjoys that collaborative part of it. I know that there were some things that she asked that there were yeses and then there were some nos. One of those yeses was
Always.
adding the dinner for Tina and Michael. And then another one that was changing his last name to bring in that Portuguese side of him. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about like that collaboration and as a director, how you kind of operate from that collaborative perspective with the actors?
It's based on trust, and Natalie has my utmost trust. And so, because she's an A-type neurotic, even though I try to present myself as calm, cool, and collected, inside my head, it's like, "Ugh." And when you know somebody else is doing the same kind of work you do, you don't only owe it to them, you benefit from them doing that drill down on their part of it. And so she had great ideas. Some stuff I wish we were able to implement wider, but the train was already moving. And so anytime I could implement something that was value add, I did. And then other times, and here's the thing: sometimes you have a great idea, and then you look back at it 3 months later, you're like, I was really attached to that, but it could go either way. I often hate what I do until I end up seeing it 6 months later, and I'm like, why was I so hard on myself on that decision? It was either or, and they were both good. I was just, you get attached to your own feelings as an artist more than you have to sometimes. Luckily, she presents them, accepts them, and then she has this wonderful little thing. She says, "But you probably know better than me. You've already thought about this." And it's so disarming. And then all you want to do is be like, "No, no, 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 no. It's a trick," and I'm positive of it. But it works.
So I want to talk a little bit more about working. You mentioned earlier with working with Natalie in multiple projects. Also, I think like you've worked, if I counted right, with at least maybe 4 projects with Jake, and Jake is in the fourth movie. Does that sound
Yeah,
right? Are my numbers close?
it might be three. It might be four.
I
It's
think
three
I
or
counted
four.
4. I kept finding another one. And so
I got
you've,
they retitled Once Upon a Christmas to make Christmas at Maple Creek. So that could be one movie.
oh, got it. Yeah.
It was a Lifetime movie that somehow says Hallmark on IMDb when it's not, but I don't understand the internet. It's like Wikipedia, it self-corrects. It was that, it was this one, and what's the third one?
Oh, I'm gonna
Either
look.
way, you're right. It is three,
They're
and
there.
I love that man, and that guy's family too.
So,
He
what is that? You mentioned, like, when Natalie shares ideas with you in that collaboration because it's built on that trust. So, what is that like when you've worked with certain actors or even like the production company over an extended period of time? Like, how does that change your role and what you do?
trust again. The big one. My production company doesn't even really come to set when I'm working. They kind of. I talked to a lot of directors. They're like, "Oh, I always have somebody at the monitor beside me." I'm like, I don't. They've
Yeah.
kind of let me just go off and make movies, make decisions. If there's big creative decisions, I call upstairs and say, "Hey, I can't do this, but I can do this," or "What do you think of this?" And so like Natalie, sometimes I win, sometimes I lose, but and then you give it the old college effort, whatever decision gets made. And so trust is the big one. Trust of the team. I've seen crew come in from interns from college and be assistants to now they're key collaborators that are senior in any other town just because of the volume of the work we've done the past 5 years.
Mhm.
24-year-olds getting 50 movies experience. The team does 10 movies a year. I can only do 2 to 5 of them depending because my contracts are longer. I have editing, development, and other directors coming in. Like I couldn't do all 4 movies, and so they were lucky to find Amy, and we traded off and communicated and tried to help each other out where we could.
So doing a series like this when, you're trying to put 4 movies together, I imagine is a bit different than doing your typical just 15-day movie of the week. Do you remember any of those challenges that made this project unique?
Oh yeah, this one specifically because when the bosses were piecing them together, they kind of roughed it in on a board saying, "We think we need 5 days of crossover with all the cast." So they hire the actors, negotiate the days they need them, and then when it comes to actual physical production, it looks like they need 10 to 20 days of crossover. So we were already in preparation on movie one. Luckily, we shot Olivia's story first, which was all in this cabin. So once I found that cabin, coincidentally from a contact from 2003, I was already 90% set. And then I could turn my eyes to how do we unravel this unwrapping. So this scene's a phone call. This one's a dinner. This one can be I was going to do all the exterior shots at the Alfred house because Tina's story takes place there. So I did all the comings and goings and party establishers and everything else. And then she had to do my Olivia kiss break, no spoiler, because that was on her territory when the actors are going to be in town. And so you had to pick what you were going to hand off. And on the crossover week, she was supposed to do all 5 days, but then she looked at the schedule. She's like, Max, like 5 of these 6 scenes are all from one of your movies. Do you want to come in? I said, sure. And so I came in, and it was actually would have been my first day with Natalie on that movie. So she goes, I was happy you did because it changes the vibe when somebody else has done, a quarter of your work.
Yeah.
I had to go rescue a director in Newfoundland on a Hallmark movie. Luckily, it was with a couple of friends, Corey Sevier and Becky Dalton, and I flew out to Newfoundland to do 3 days on a movie for a director out of his 15. I'm like, I've done 20% of your movie here, man. Are you going to get, like, I didn't want him, at some point you start feeling ownership over, even though
Yeah.
it's his movie.
Yeah.
And luckily, he healed from his COVID and came back on the fourth day because the fifth day was going to be his finale. I was like, okay, I've done your opening and I've done your kiss. This is my movie now. But and
So,
so logistics is the biggest impediment to what we can do in this
got it.
whole business. You get the logistics right. I think it was somebody who said it was a war analogy. Pardon. It was amateurs think about tactics, professionals think about logistics. How do I get the people, the team, the space, everybody in here so that then we can create? Because without all that, you're scrambling. And so logistics was the biggest thing for that crossover on sharing movies, sharing actors, and sharing timelines.
Would you say that logistics are kind of what you thrive on when it comes to piecing everything together as a director?
I think that, and I've been told I'm a bit more tech oriented than other directors because I grew up with a cinematographer. And so we came up together. So yeah, logistics, because what I look at it is like there's a movie called About a Boy with Hugh Grant. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
he's a
yeah.
bit of a sociopath. He looks at his life like units of time, like 15-minute blocks. That's
Yeah.
kind of how I look at production. I'm like, if I spend 15 more on this, I'm losing it here because we have set timelines because we can't afford the extra overtime. We actually do ours in 14 days compared to Hallmark on 15. And so I go right down to how many yards away the trucks are because if I send somebody back for a piece of equipment, what's the line loss? I go right to working with the son. I did a movie called Romance with a Twist with Jocelyn Hudon and
Good one.
Olivia Renaud. And when they're building the progression of the fair, there were scenes on the building, there were scenes in the middle, and then there was nighttime scenes at the end when it's all built. But the art team needs to build the whole thing because otherwise we're all working. And so I followed the sun as a backlight across until nighttime. And so they were building behind me because we couldn't afford the second day to pre-build and tear down. So you look at stuff like, okay, I'll start this way and move this way. And then you turn around, and it's all built. And now it's nighttime and he walks through the finished thing. And then as soon as you're done, cut, tear it all down. And so it really is like organizing a circus and hoping to capture the best pieces of it.
Got it. So you said, have you done 30
I think
ish?
like 33, but including Foreverland and my other indie features. So maybe 32, 31 Hallmark, or not
Yeah.
Hallmark, Hallmark and Lifetime
Yeah.
and Netflix, I guess a couple in there. So
You mentioned Foreverland that, it's such a special project, but knowing now what you knew then, you might do some things differently. So, what are some things that you're like, as a director, having done this 33-ish times, I do differently or I know differently now than when I first started this?
understanding the words on the page and how to translate them better. I can't do this, but I can do this. Or if we're going to do this, I need this. And then what's the trade off on that? And it was an early, my first AD, who it sounds like assistant director, but it's not. He's the head of logistics. He's my right hand, my director of photography is my left hand. And he's like, listen, you haven't done this before. You come from a 5-person film team at your family cottage making indie films on your time. He goes, you're going to be ready to move on to the next set, and we're going to leave in a van with the actors and stand there and rehearse it. But they're still going to be unloading the 18 or reloading the 18 wheelers, tail up, drive the 20 minutes, unload, and come. It's going to be a 2 hour gap. Whereas, so making choices that maximize that time is like that's 2 hours out of your 12 gone.
Yeah.
And so choosing the right locations, not fighting the light, pivoting for the sake of story, as long as the beat gets translated in the most cinematic way. The audience doesn't know you wanted to shoot on the bridge in New York, and that's $1 million shot. They could be, if the bridge is symbolic, it could be a footbridge in Central Park instead. They
Yeah.
don't know. They just care about the two people in the story beat. Unless you're stopping traffic and blowing it up, it didn't need to be on that bridge to begin with. Just put it somewhere nice that represents the story, that enhances their beat, and then let the story do its job. I'd rather do something well than half-assed on a beat I couldn't achieve.
Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah.
probably the long form answer of I wish I made a couple different choices. For instance, in Foreverland, it's a road trip from Vancouver to Mexico through America. Canada doesn't have a tax credit co-production agreement with America. It's the largest, America is the largest output of culture worldwide. They protect their own, and so, but Mexico does. So I can shoot Canada and Mexico as if it was Canada.
Oh.
I have a road trip through America and I couldn't shoot there. And so you had to find the spots in Vancouver Island. Where's the ocean? Oh, I saw it in August. It was sunny Long Beach, but I shoot in January and like it just snowed the day before. Um, I would have just pivoted the story to trains, planes, and automobile within Vancouver and then put them on a plane, dropped them in Mexico, and then done planes, trains, and automobile in Mexico. And I might have gotten more value out of my dollar and the road trip because the road trip was a representation for the journey. It wasn't about the actual road.
Yeah.
It's just about putting stumbling blocks in front of them along the way. So I would have pivoted the story so I could execute it better. But I didn't know.
Interesting. You didn't know. Yeah. Do you have places, having done this now, and I know every story is different, but do you have like location places where it's like, I prefer to shoot here, or does it just really depend on the story?
Story, absolutely. The script is the blueprint. I mean, I liken this to my construction friends. It's the blueprint, and they get a production manager who has to like figure it out, cost it out, and then, hey, a wise producer, I had a scene that was supposed to be on Venice Beach. He goes, "This is a $250,000 scene. What's the point of the scene?" I said, "You got to raise money." He goes, "Is there another way for him to raise money?" I was like, "Yeah, we can steal a jar of money from Juliette Lewis." And so it's like, and, it's more personal, it's more character, it's more plot as opposed to the spectacle. Now, if you're lucky and you got endless budgets, you can do both. Hopefully, you have great character moments in massive, beautiful sets.
Yeah.
I'm not there in my career yet, so we have to always make creative choices that help get the point across without breaking the bank.
So I've visited with some directors who have said, if you watch this movie, like these are some of the things that I do as a director. One of them shared, I love shooting through like with mirrors. I love playing off of
Yeah.
mirrors. Another one, I like to shoot through things. Are there some Max McGuire things that you always like to try to incorporate into your movies?
Well, they're taking all the good ones.
Ah,
I like lines, leading lines we call them. So you got lines behind your head, and if you sat in the V, they would all be pointing towards you. I love foreground, so shooting through things. I always ask for a table of twinkle, glass, red, crinoline, and it just kind of softens. What you're doing is you're framing the frame. And so any frame within a frame, especially on your lead. I pitched on a movie I didn't get, and it was a woman finding her faith. And so I suggested always having a beam of light in the background with a little bit of like dust or particles floating through it. And she'd have to cross through it or stop halfway in. And it's just, you look for the motifs that can help enhance what you have. And then sometimes it's just dolling up a pretty shot because, as you know, often these movies are just about the actors figuring it out together. But that doesn't mean I can't. What you'll find in mine is I always try to go a little bit farther, wider back, and I always try to put a move on that setting. So because I choose nice big sets, I don't want to just smash into close-ups and blur out the background. I'm like, why take all this effort to find this place and pay for it if it's just going to be 3 minutes on close-ups?
right.
So that if you look at mine, it'll be that. I use the wide more and I use the wide move more as opposed to just as a flash of where we are. I try to hold it.
So, will we see that? Because we haven't talked very much about Cindy's movie.
Yeah,
Will we see some of that in Cindy and Jake's movie?
100%. Now it's an isolated set. They're snowed in cabin, right?
Yeah, so and I haven't watched that one yet, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking they're in a cabin. So talk a little bit about shooting those locations.
Oh my God, I was terrified when I got that one on my desk first until I heard it was Jake and Cindy. Then I didn't care. I'd watch, them on a handy cam. Because it really is about chemistry ultimately. And the little rumor within our group is we think they were pretty crackling together. Um, And they are. So yes, you'll see it because I mentioned earlier, I made a short film with an actress from LA whose mother was a old world actress in the 70s and her dad was royalty in Hollywood back in the day. He was the guy left in space in 2001 Space Odyssey.
Oh yeah.
And her mother remarried a guy from the Ottawa area, and they had a summer cabin here from LA. And so I met them and knew of this cabin. So I reached out, and she put me in touch with her father, who put me in touch with the property manager because they only come for 2 or 3 weeks of summer, and then they get it rented out the rest of the year. I said, "Any interest in having this in a movie?" And basically, I said, "What's the upside?" We rented it. They said, "Yeah, it's yours." And so I found a cabin with high ceilings, original log, big open space, so I could still do those big wides, get behind the table, get behind the sofa, get behind the cabinets, and make sure that within that giant living room, kitchen, bedroom, I had multiple versions of it, so you don't get tired of seeing the same thing. And remember, we're shooting these from April to August. It's a snowed in snowstorm movie. The amount of fake snow, like they go traipsing through the woods in snowshoes. I had to put snowshoes on them and walk them through the fake bubble snow and everything, and had a good laugh with that. And then there's in the cut, my editor didn't. I'm gonna get into like practicing what he did.
Do it. I
So
love it.
Jake's in his big snowshoes doing this, and then I said the next shot we're only here, so you don't have to wear them if you don't want, because he's just clanging on rocks and mud, but
Yeah.
he's still doing the like steps, and every once in a while his foot would come in the frame, and it's just a shoe, and I'm just dying like, Jake, I can see your shoes. He's like, you can see that much? I thought we were tight. I'm like, I got a widen tight, but I mean, I didn't think you don't have to do moonwalking.
Yeah.
And so it's fun. And it made the original cut until I caught it. And I just said, let's just zoom in a little bit past there so we don't see his non-snowshoe shoes. And yeah, so it's fun. I mean, my wife teases me. She's like, you go to work and like, yeah, it's stressful, but you have fun all day. And
Yeah.
she's not wrong. I do 14, 15 hours sometimes, but I laugh a whole lot of the time and get to work with people who have been trying to be their best at this for, decades or brand new.
Yeah.
Alex relatively new, and he loved it. And he's a creative, like heart throb. Like he just exudes like positive energy, and he was enjoying the process. And I think he's really blown up this year too with Machu Picchu and everything. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
he
think
was
we'll be
great to
seeing more of
talk
him.
to. Yeah, and it
Yeah,
was it was interesting to see him in a Machu Picchu proposal as this just like flamboyant, no care in the world, I'm going to climb the
yeah,
mountain. And then Michael Alonso, a completely different character, but both of them so good. I mean,
yeah,
and even like Michael and Tina with Natalie and Alec, uh,
yeah,
just a sweet movie, but still that chemistry was there. Just you just
yeah,
kind of felt that connection. So it's been interesting to see him. He's five
yeah.
movies in a row. It's been easy to or fun to see that. So
Yeah, definitely. But that was we were one of the early ones that was shot for him. I think we were second. Um, and that was actually a discovery for him and I too, because I didn't have the rapport previously, and he's watching me and Natalie, have this 4 movie rapport, and we found it together, which was really nice because he had initially a slightly different read on it, and then because he was going to go more to his natural instincts of laissez-faire, and I was like,
yeah,
remember, we got to find the laissez-faire is where we land. The beginning is, how we see ourselves as opposed to who we really are.
yeah.
And
It played
so that's the
really
arc.
well with him being a father who,
Hmm.
is a widow who's trying to stay, keep, in control of the situation with his daughter, having
Hmm.
such a good relationship. He played that father,
Yeah. Oh, and
calm
him
and
and Presley got along so well too. I think they're still pals.
yeah,
So
that's so cool. So, talk a
yeah.
little bit more, if you will, about Cindy and Jake's movie that will be coming up at the end of the month, and kind of how that's because I know all four stories are different, yet they're all connected.
Hmm.
How is that movie different than Tina's Miracle?
Uh, very. She has one of my favorite tropes in these is she has a previous relation reconnection. And the misunderstandings of why it didn't work. And I really love that it's empowering because she chose to pursue her dreams as opposed to change her life for someone right after college. And I think that's kind of a cool message, and that it can still work out. with the
Mm,
person, but sometimes you need to just take another track.
mm.
And when it's meant to be, you'll come back across each other. And yeah, we're gonna have some crackling banter, and between those two, I wish I could have put a guitar in his hand because the guy's a musical genius. Um, like that guy's a Broadway
Did
singer,
I know that? I don't
like
know if I knew
dancing.
that.
He was Spider-Man on Broadway.
Oh my
He's like
goodness.
Jersey Boys. He's like classically trained, and then
Wow.
also like humble. I remember in Once Upon a Christmas, I warned him and my buddy Olivier from Romance. So Olivier started in Ottawa. We brought him up through a few like lower cast levels, and then I was like, oh, he's good. He's got a great jaw. In fact, Natalie's like, yeah, you got a Superman thing. Like, who's your agent? You should be auditioning for higher roles in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we told him that I brought him back what we call a number three, like the other interest. So one and two are your two stars, and then number three is, often either the best friend or the other guy. I brought him
Okay.
back for another guy role in that movie, and then he started getting leads, and then so I got to bring him back as a lead finally. And anyhow, Jake, it's Olivia was playing the lead on a romance cover novelist, so like the model. And I said, Jake, you might want to start doing your push-ups, buddy, because the other guy's got a pretty impressive physique.
Yeah.
Meantime, it's first movie back from COVID. Olivia's like, I've been eating cheese and drinking wine for like 4 months, man. Like, when are we going to do this photo shoot? Because I got to get in shape and there's no gyms open. So he's going to public parks, like doing two-a-days, eating cans of tuna, trying to get ripped out again. And I got Jake on the other side going, oh, I don't mind. Like, I'm the funny guy, the handyman, right? But then he'd be like, but how ripped is he? And so I'm like, really ripped, push hard. And so it's just
So,
and we laugh about it.
so you said Olivier, how do you say his
Yeah.
last name?
Renaud.
He's in the twisty one,
Yeah, romance with a twist.
Romance with a Twist, which I loved with Jocelyn. So, did you film that one before or after?
Yes. Let me think.
They were
I don't
same
remember.
year. I mean, they were both last year when they first.
I did
Anyways, love
Falling
that one
Like
as well.
Snowflakes right before those two. No, it was the year before I did Romance because it
Okay,
aired in January of last year.
got it. Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah. It
so
was early
that
on.
was, yeah, that was my summer fall movie of the year before. And so that was a trip. Just the logistics of getting actors up on ropes.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Anyhow, yeah.
And
Lucky he
finding
had been in
stunt
Cirque du
doubles, I
Soleil.
imagine, right? Finding
Well,
stunt
yes,
doubles.
I insisted. So Jocelyn is a powerhouse. She started taking professional training as soon as she knew the movie was going to happen. And so she did like 90% of her own stunts, including the big fall, like the massive one where they do in sync. Um, and then, but I said, hey, let's be careful, get doubles, get a coordinator, get a choreographer, naturally, just in case,
Yeah.
because initially people are like, well, she's training. I'm like, yeah, you're training to do like a 5 minute routine. You're not training to do a 5 minute routine 10 times a day for 15 days.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what happens if she twists an arm on day one? And then everybody obviously quickly agreed with me. But it was an added cost
Yeah.
bringing in people because she's like, Max, I know you're bringing these people in to be safe, but I want to do this. I said, Jocelyn, I want you to do it too, but let's save it for the performance. Let's save it for the shot. Like, let's put the doubles up for rehearsal, for camera prep, walk you through it and everything else. And then Olivier had never actually done silks, but he had been in Cirque du Soleil with ropes. Look similar, totally different. And so he got like on the day training, and then he did some of his own flips. And then he's the guy in the splits holding her at the end, and I couldn't believe what he was able to do. Needless to say, we had to cover all his tattoo while he's in the sleeveless shirt, and I'm yearning for the day where we just say we're okay with all those tattoos because a lot of
Yeah.
these actors have them,
Yeah.
and we cover them up as if they're saintly bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and things are changing. I
Yeah,
know like the Hallmark is really starting to tap into more of that comedy side of the rom-com.
yeah,
Things are
yeah.
changing, so we'll give it some time, right?
Listen, you know what? Everybody ultimately wants the audience to be happy. It's just sometimes one left hand's doing this, right hand's doing this, and you can get to chasing when you try to please everybody. I think the thing is you try to make the best version of whatever that individual movie is, and then the audience will recognize this one was more heartfelt, this one was more comedy, this one was lighter, this one had more depth.
Yeah.
And they can all be great. It's just trying not to make every individual one everything is the biggest
Yeah.
challenge as a filmmaker. And then you see it in the scripts like, oh, this is a 5 minute scene that's witty, banter, then crying, then hug. I was like, tell that to an actor. Like that internal changes they have to do is almost impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I praise them for being able to pull it off.
So we've talked a lot about your rom-com background, but many may not know that there's this thriller side to your directing as well. So what's that like? Do you see overlaps in directing some of those thriller movies versus the rom-coms that you do?
The yin to my yang. Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, it's always going to be script, schedule. Um, well, my producer says budget, but I say execution. And so the logistics are all the same. Obviously, instead of a romantic dance choreography, we're going to do a adrenaline fueled fight choreography. And my favorite fight was in a movie called, they keep retitling these. Um, it was The Ice Truck Killer or something like that. And it was two high school girls fighting the serial killer in a snowstorm in an 18 wheeler and like whipping them around, flipping them around. And it cut so seamlessly with the doubles and the actors and the reactions and the impact. And it's all choreography to me. It's all poetic. It's all dance. Different tone, different stakes. It's nice to play in the shadows of the thrillers, whereas in rom-com we have to lighten everything up, make sure it's almost commercial lighting, and people want bright, happy. And the thrillers, you get to explore some of the other aspects of your filmmaking that you signed up for. I also have my own indie theatrical thriller that I'm working on, and if I can get that back through, hopefully it'll raise my stock in that side of the vein, and I can keep both of these planes going because it's all storytelling at the end of the day. So
Mm-hmm.
um, you don't want to ever be pigeonholed. On the other hand, you also want to keep working.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've shared that one of the hardest parts of your job is having to compromise where there are things, you have limitations. You said, execution, there's budget and all of that. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I imagine when you've got this project that's like your baby, you just want to give all of it 100%, but yet you have to balance all of those constraints. So what's that like?
A couple of the anecdotes I talked about were direct cause and effect. As I said, I wrote a panhandling scene in Venice Beach, and if somebody tells you it's $250,000, your whole movie is only 1 million. Like you have to pivot,
Yeah.
and you think you're killing your babies by doing so. Like they say, you gotta. It's an awful term. Um, kill your baby ideas,
Yes.
and so that you've grown to love. But the truth is, that was the idea for the execution you had in that moment, and it might be a great version, but it doesn't mean there's another great version.
Mhm.
Um, and being having a neuroplasticity to like see an alternative angle. Sometimes it means no, doubling down and fighting for what you know you need to get it done. It's just a really hard balance. Like there was a moment in a movie, and I won't get specific because I don't want to out anybody, but where they wanted a massive change in an ending from death to life and everything else, and there was a big brouhaha, and it was like, but you know, the movie is about learning to live, yes, but you have to lose some life in order to value it. And that was like big email campaigns, actors petitioning producers,
Mm.
and then luckily they came back around. And but like that could have changed the character of a movie. It
Wow.
did for a moment. And so that would have felt like a loss. I felt in some of those moments like not doing it. Like I can't do it. I'm going to have my artistic integrity. And it's like, wait a minute, is this worth your whole career for the sake of it? It's not that it's a good idea or a bad idea. They're looking at it from a different standpoint: sales, economics, marketing. And I'm looking at it from no, I'm the only one with the right answer. I think as you mature, you start to realize people don't do things against you; they do things for themselves,
Mm.
and usually fear driven. The hope is preparation, script, schedule. We're all in line all the time, but it's just natural to look at the same page and see two different things. So the job as a director, as a writer director, as no tourist, to make sure you're bringing people along with you as opposed to just telling them. It's easy to
Mhm.
tell people what you want. It's harder to not only tell them, but share with them so that they make you feel like it's what they want too.
Oh, yeah. That's so good. Wow. Yeah, that's so good. So when you look back, and I know this is a tough question to answer, given you've done 30-ish Hallmark movies, but when you look back, what are some of those moments? And, even if you wanted to speak to Unwrapping Christmas, but I imagine there may be others where you're like, these are really like moments that at the end of it, I'm very proud of. Can you think of any of those?
Oh, Yeah. Um, Foreverland, I really like the finale sequence when he decides to choose hope. I love the execution of jumping in the pond and physio save and the hospital rush. That worked for me. The healer, and also it's in the trailer, so it's no spoiler. But when he's with Matt Frewer, the actor who played Max Headroom back in the day, and they're testing out coffins, and just a classic overhead shot of a boy and a man in a coffin having a conversation about what it means. I mean, that to me was what I imagined in my basement when I was 25,
Wow.
and to be there on set and it executes like that. Um, on the Hallmark movies and whatnot, it's when the plans, for instance, I talked about building the fairground on Romance with a Twist, and then you get there and all the pieces click. The finale on Romance with a Twist, what they did, that 2.5 minute performance, right down to, okay, we're going to start on the ground, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. When they did their drop, sync, flip, they were slightly off. My editor did a split screen, changed the timings on Olivier's fall so that they're perfectly in sync. And it's just like the tech meets the script, meets the execution, and then the actors, and then they come down and you're high fiving, and it feels like you made $100 million movie, and you realize you're just on day 12 or 14. There's a million little victories a day, and in every movie. Um, but every once in a while, you're like, oh, yeah, that was pretty cool. And you don't see that too often. I just did a movie that's not released with Natalie as well, and it involves horse racing, skiing behind horses, ski joring. And it was maybe one of the most challenging movies of my life because nobody in Ottawa does this sport. It's literally slalom skiing as a horse is throttling down a path, over jumps, and everything else. And we had to figure out how to do this from scratch in 3 weeks. Much like the Romance with a Twist, they just send the script down and say, "Okay, figure it out. You said you could do it." I'm like, I can do it. I can do anything, but it costs money, time, or effort, and we don't have much of any of them. I can just put a lot of effort in. And so that was like, holy smokes, to watch the stunt horses, the stunt riders, and then steam it in. I remember the opening of the character. He's supposed to be doing the course, and then he does a backflip. I'm like, how am I going to do this? And then we figured it out. And
Yeah.
those are the moments where you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
we've got the skill set to figure it out, even if we don't know exactly how to in the moment when we get it and we read it. Because my
It's
producer will call me right away and say, we're going to change this, right? Like, we're going to simplify.
yeah.
I say, get the boss on the phone, ask him what he wants. With Romance with a Twist, I say, get him on. Does he want the Hallmark simplified, where it's just a stunt person from afar and then cut to ta da on a close up? And he goes, Max, I want a expletive circus show. I said, okay, he'll get a circus show then. And
Yeah.
so, same with the horses. I said, what do you want? The sport. I said,
Yeah.
okay, we'll get
Yeah.
the sport.
So it's
So those
interesting
are the
that you
parts that make my heart pump.
that's so cool. Natalie shared, and she couldn't go into too many details about that
Hmm.
project, but I got the hint that it was something that's very special to her. That she's really excited
Yeah.
for it to come to our screens. So to hear you talk a little bit about that, can you share anything else about that movie?
Um, Western style, and not classic, just Hallmark where you're on a ranch with a hat. Like horses play a part in major parts of the movie, and hard riding, like hard riding horses and competition. And listen, it follows the dramatic arc of the structure we normally do, but it's a little bit different. It's a little less focused on just one and two having crackling dialogue the whole time.
Okay.
And so we discovered a young actor out of Montreal because we did a co-production with Quebec and Canada, and we needed a Quebec star, or like a Quebec male actor. And he is, it turns out he was a child star in Quebec. He's acted his whole life, but we didn't know him in the Anglo side.
Yeah.
And handsome guy, popping blue eyes, charisma at the wazoo. And he's got like a rumbling rumble voice, so to speak, that like I'm sure everybody in post production was like, "Oh, we got to clean this up and make it absolutely clear." I'm like, "Why? He's a rancher. He stayed in Montana. He's a
Yeah.
rancher. Let him mumble his
Let her
way.
do it.
It did fine for Tom Hardy. He's done
Yeah.
okay. I can't understand half the words Tom Hardy says."
So we'll be
And
looking for
so
that one, right?
yeah. I hesitate to give it too much away either because it's the same guys that keep hiring me, and if it's not released, they put pretty strict
Absolutely.
rules on us. But listen, at the end of the day, you've seen some of the stuff we've shared online. So if you
Uh-huh.
creep through our stories, there's hints.
Any other projects that you can share at all that are coming up? Or even
So
like,
that one's the only unreleased one I have. I have my own thriller. Trigger warning, there's a hunting thriller I'm working on. I know America's a big hunting country, though, so I don't think it'll offend too many people. But
spoiler, it's online. If you go online, you can kind of see what it's about, and it looks pretty cool.
yeah,
And I'm a hunter, by the way, so I was really
yeah.
into reading about it.
Okay, so that is something I came up with right after Foreverland. And I wrote that within a year or two of Foreverland, and it almost got made early on. I was almost back to back on movies that I wrote in my parents' basement, but I ran into some legal issues with a defunct producer and lawsuits and time and money and career, and then some. I've been able to almost kick it back to life now, 10 years later, and there's a real possibility it could get made, but there's a real possibility it falls apart too. So I say this openly while having made 34 movies that you don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and that one's really close to my heart because I grew up with a family full of hunters too, and it was inspired by a crazy event that almost went crazy but didn't. Luckily, cooler minds prevailed. But two hunting camps arguing over the same deer and whose is it. And in the real story, somebody hits the safety on their gun and everybody backs down because it's not worth it. But
Right.
in the movie, it's an accidental shot turns fatal, and everybody tries to help keep Grandpa alive. But when he passes, the hunters become the hunted, and so you got to learn. You got to use all the tools that you were taught in the first act about deer behavior, animal behavior. First, they
Hmm.
run, then they hide, and animals
Hmm.
usually only attack when cornered. And that's what
Hmm.
the family has to do. And it's really about how far both sides of the fence will go to protect their own young. And so after Foreverland, I learned it's really hard to make a drama about self actualization that travels around the world and makes millions and millions of dollars. So I went back to the core roots of story and themes of life and death, love and hate, borders, revenge, protection of your young. And those are themes that resonate everywhere, every corner
Hmm.
of the planet. So the hope is that if it gets made, it opens up more opportunities. So we'll see.
Well, we'll cross our fingers that
Please, and your
it
toes.
comes alive. Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
I mean, like you shared, the things that you might do differently now in Foreverland, like now you've got that opportunity to kind of like all of the things
yeah,
that you've learned, execute this one, accordingly. So
yeah.
that's
And I
exciting.
might be doing a half redo, not a redo on Foreverland because that's illegal, but a new version because of this pill I got. And so my father and I had written a screenplay about retirement as a new beginning. Instead, I changed it to a CF patient who's lived with his parents his whole life at 35, and then he gets a miracle cure. And now what? And so it's kind of like the dog that catches up to the car. What does life mean? What do you do once you get all that time back? It's easy to be a hero when everybody thinks you're going to be gone. But what do you do now that you have time? It's sort of a parable for all of us that we all can change our lives at any moment. We just have to be, willing to take the risk. And so that's something I'm currently writing. That's the first time I've talked about it.
That's cool. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
we'll be
called
looking
Second
for.
Wind. Second Wind.
Okay.
And so,
You heard it
yeah.
here, everybody.
Breaking news
Breaking
banner.
news. That's so cool. Do you have time for a couple of just fun questions to get to know
Of
you a little
course.
bit more? All right.
Yep.
So, looking back on the projects that you've done, is there a project where you're like, if I could have been on the other side of the camera in this movie or project, it would have been a good time?
So, if I could act, first of all. Um, so, my first movie that I made on my own with a friend who also has done some Hallmark movies now, but this one I was 18, 19, 20, this, no, 2021. Crossing the Wake. It was a $5,000 movie at my family cottage, and it was the first time I introduced my cystic fibrosis into a movie. The problem was I wanted to be so subtle about it that when people left the theater at the charity screening, they're like, what's MS? And they didn't even have the right illness because I didn't address or explain it, not realizing that the whole world doesn't know what this small genetic illness is. And
Yeah.
so that ended up inspiring Foreverland. But I wish I acted in it just because it was so personal. It would have been the first sort of actually my 18-year-old first ex-girlfriend was in it, even though we had dated 2 years before. My close friend from high school played a version of himself, so it was my group of friends in the structure of the movie The Big Chill. You ever see that movie way back when in the 80s?
Oh, way back. Yeah.
And so that was about lost hope at 30s. Mine was 20-year-olds with false hope at their parents' cottage, trying to figure out what the next steps are after college. And so my group of friends in their characteristics. And so,
Okay. Interesting.
yeah, it's not
That's
really publicly consumable. It was sold in like Serbia, Montenegro, maybe England. I think the $5,000 earned me $4,000, but it
Oh,
got me my next movie. But I never would have acted again after that.
there you go. Okay. Do you have any like on-set rituals or things that, these are the things that I do every day or that I'm making a movie? Like some people like I gotta have my cup of coffee before I do anything. Do you have any of those?
So the best craft person in the business, Rhonda, always comes through with my half sweet mocha. I previously used to consume 250 grams of fuzzy peaches, which is a candy here in Canada that you don't get there. You guys get the Sour
Oh
Patch
no,
Kids.
wait, we have to talk. I've heard about this on one of your previous interviews, and I ordered
Yes,
the fuzzy peaches and the cherry one.
cherry blasters.
Good. Oh, wait.
Always have them on
Oh my
hand.
God. And they are not easy to get in the States. I'm just telling you.
I don't under somebody should license them and buy them. It is a different world than the sour candy you guys have. When I
No, they're
travel, I just
better.
bring my
They are
own.
better. Yeah.
I might somebody get the license and just import them. I'm sure one of your many tens of thousands of viewers might be in the food and beverage business. Like, just buy the license and import them without the tariff.
Yeah, really.
A
They
little,
are they are good. I will
they're
say
great.
that.
Yeah.
Well,
So
you
I used to show up and somebody would have them on my desk. And I have a second assistant AD who knows I eat a lot of candy. And so every day there's going to be a bottle of water and a little apple on my monitor right in front of me. So she's like, also eat something healthy, please. Sort of like the dropping it off to the
balancing out.
teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Food, right? It's just fun. As for behavior, everybody knows I'll try to laugh all 13 hours of the day. Uh, but if we have to tighten up and, get more strict, then we get more strict. But it's always fun. So
Yeah.
that's the other one. Laughing. You'll hear me laughing.
Good. Good. So you call wrap on a movie. What's the
Yeah.
first thing you always do after wrapping a movie?
I don't party anymore. I come home and kiss my dog, my wife.
There you go.
My Instagram, if you've seen it, is mostly my dogs and my wife.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they're just, when we made the choice as I was getting older that we weren't going to have kids, it's like the dogs really take that in. I got a routine. I got a coffee shop down the street. I go right at. I bring one of my dogs with me every day, and
Nice.
everybody in the neighborhood knows them. We just go to places we know we're allowed to go together. And so
And we haven't had one make an appearance today. That's
you're not
happening.
wrong. I'm going to grab Lenny. He's normally clawing at my leg. Come here, Bubba. I got him. Ah. This is my old boy Lenny. He acts like he's 20, but he's only 8.5. But if he could do this all day, he would.
Is he that calm all the time?
All the time.
Wow.
Like I can normally put him on his back and he'll just sit there.
What breed
And
is he?
he's a mini golden doodle, but he got all the
Mm,
straight hair of the golden.
mm.
But he's just a sweetheart.
You're adorable and
Yeah, he's
calm
a
and very camera
I-
ready.
yeah. So they wanted to put him as the dog in the series of movies because they knew my dog and they knew how I was. I said, this dog is terrified of metal clanging. He's not going to be able to be on set with dollies and light stands and people yelling. I mean, if he hears a fly in the house, he's like, forget it. I'm going back to bed. I'll see you tomorrow.
Wow.
But otherwise, yeah, he's got a pulse of like 12.
Good dog.
He's a piece of like furniture decor.
Good dog. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so how can people keep in like contact as far as projects, follow you on social media? How do they find you?
So my website's maxwellmcguirefilm.com and my Instagram is /MaxwellMcGuire. I seem to have been able to get my handle on everything: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever the hell it is. And so Instagram, I tend to do all my announcements. You get unofficial behind the scenes stuff when we're shooting, crew jokes, the making of, and they're all on my stories that I've highlighted too. I got like 4 or 5 movie highlights, and that goes all the way back to my first Christmas movie, Mistletoe and Menorah with Jake Epstein.
Oh
That's the
yeah,
third one.
that's another one.
And so that was my first with him. And so it's just the highlights are movies 1, 2, 3, 4, my wife, my dogs, and my travels.
Got
You
it.
can avoid
That's
the
awesome.
travels if you don't like to see. Some people consider humble bragging. To me, it's my life journal. It's for me when
Oh,
I get older.
No, I love the traveling. So my
Yeah.
Instagram account actually started out as uh, all about my travels, and people didn't want to know about my travels. They wanted to know about Hallmark and all that.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, whatever you want, that's what we'll give you. So
That's what it is. It's me unapologetically, and that's life, right?
yeah,
And so,
yeah.
if so, happy to follow and interact. And I remember when I did the Amber Marshall movie, she warned me.
Oh,
She goes, I have some
another
rabid
another one
fans.
so good. It's so good.
Yeah. That
I'm so
poor
glad you
dog
did.
was not a movie dog. He did not want to be in that movie. But I said, somebody start an Instagram account because that dog's going to go viral because he's so damn handsome.
Yeah.
But he was be like, I got to be here for how long? 8 hours? I thought I was going to come and get a cookie and sit down and leave. He's like, Dad, like, what's going on? Poor boy. I think his name was Max, actually. Um, and so she warned me that her fans are pretty rabid, that they only want her to be with her lover on that show. And no word of a lie, as soon as it was announced, I started getting messages like, hey, the movie looks great, but why is she with that guy? She should be with this guy. Like that's, and they really, in the Heartland series, embedded her just with that guy. And it was
Hmm.
fascinating. She was
Hmm.
absolutely right. And so I was like, hey, listen, it's a different world in the Marvel universe of love stories, and so I hope she gets a reunition love story with that guy.
Yeah.
But for now, she's gonna be with my guy.
There you go. Well, and I'm a Heartland fan, and it worked. It was
Yeah,
great. That movie, and I don't even remember the name of it. Go look it up. Amber Marshall.
guided by Christmas
It was
love or
so
something.
good. I think I was on vacation in Florida, and
Yeah,
kind of
had
our
a ton of
thing.
heart.
Oh my goodness, it was so good. It was
Really
so good.
hard to make, extremely hard to make. Newfoundland's a really hard place to film, but I love it. But like the moisture in the air, the salt water, like zaps your electrical lights like mid filming. Storms can come from 0 kilometer an hour winds to 100 kilometers, and you have to tear down all your gear, and it's just you and the camera and actors. And obviously the actor, it was about a blind guy, and I said, hey, if we're gonna make this movie in 2023 or four, we need to find an actor that's representative because I don't want a guy in shades just walking around with a stick. And we
Yeah.
found Ben, luckily in New York. And so we didn't know how serious his blindness was. He's legally blind, but he can luckily see peripheral vision. So
Mm.
we had to make plans of making sure there's a 2 meter gap between gears so that he has a path. You're working with a dog, you're working with a kid, you're working with the elements. That one, I lost a lot of hair on that one, but I was really pleased with how it turned out.
Oh, it was fantastic. And I didn't know all of those details. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was good. It was really good.
yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
Okay, well, reminding everybody that if you haven't watched Tina's Miracle, it just aired this last weekend, but you can catch it on Hallmark Plus, or if you got the DVR thing going on, go back and hit record. And then Olivia's Reunion will be the last movie, the last Saturday of this month, premiering on Hallmark Channel. If you can't wait, go ahead and jump over to Hallmark Plus and watch it as well. Those of you that have enjoyed the podcast, please remember to like the podcast, share this with everybody, get that out there. We're so excited to kind of follow the projects that you've got coming up. Max, thanks so much
Very
for
cool.
being here, for visiting. It's been a treat. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's been a treat to talk to you and your viewers.
All right. Bye bye.